What you said last song was?
860.
No, I mean.
Oh, there is a habitation.
Okay, thank you. That's a good one. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about heaven. And let me tell you something, even though we are talking about it, everybody in the world knows of it. Hardly anybody in the world is certain they're going. And unfortunately, God gives us the easy to understand instructions. You know, it's kind of like, you ever seen, you go get ham, fully cooked ham, and on there's instructions. I mean, how dumb are we? It says, heat, slice, and eat. Okay, now, can you imagine somebody heats it, and they go, yeah, and they're just gnawing on it because they don't know to slice it. I mean, it's really strange. And if you want cold, just slice and eat. I mean, but these are easy instructions for us to understand when we're going to heaven. And here's what we do. We do what He commands, and we get the promises He tells us He will give. And that is based on His character. The fact that He doesn't lie, and the fact that He's proven it over and over and over and over and over throughout the Bible. So when we talk about heaven, while we may want to put up some pictures about heaven and all the things that are there, that's very difficult because it's not something you can see. It's not a physical place. It is a spiritual place, and the physical eyes can only see the spiritual, and physical cannot see the spiritual. You know, this is why the paranormal shows that you see where they're talking about ghosts and hauntings and stuff like that are just really worthless for you to be invested in because you can't see that realm anyway. So why are you worried about it? Now I'm telling you, I can understand the fear. One time I was teaching some classes and had to go get I think it was Tuesday night or something like that, had to go get the camera and the Jewel Miller film strips. You remember the Jewel Miller film strips? I think they're still valid today. They're dressed in 1960s stuff, but anyway, they're still valid today. And I had to go down this hall before you get to the light switch, and then down another hall, it's still going, to the next light switch, and then into the auditorium. And when you get into the auditorium, you can't turn on the lights. Now, I've always, and this doesn't have any rationale to it. I'm going to tell you that right now. But I've always been scared of church buildings and with no one else there but me. And it all comes from the fact that I had a dream one time, and my father said, if you don't get in the car when we tell you, if you can mess around and we can't find you, one of these days we're just going to leave you here. And so I had this dream about being locked in the building, and I couldn't get out, and there they were driving away, and demons were popping up from the yard. You know, I don't know what demons look about a dream. And so I go in and I get all the way to the front because right there by the front door, behind the key to the front door, is this closet had in it. And I pushed the button. And this button that they had was designed to turn on every single light in the auditorium. And it has a little booster that goes with it. It goes, boom. Scared me to death. And then I got to turn it out and walk back through, turn out each light and walk back with darkness behind me. You know, this is the way man thinks about demons, ghosts, things of the spiritual realm coming after them. But the reality is, God tells us you can't see the spiritual realm, and you should not worry about what you're not responsible for. So therefore, let it go. Doesn't make it easy. Doesn't still give me a little twitch in my back and stomach, you know, when I do this kind of thing. And yes, I come in here every night and turn the lights on, you know, Sunday and Wednesday nights, and it's dark. I like summertime. But anyway, so we're going to talk about heaven. We're going to talk about as God talks about it, and not in a way in which we can physically see it, but a way in which we can know. So let's take a look at our first point here in John 14. Here's what Jesus has recorded for us. The Holy Spirit's recorded for us about what Jesus has said. John 14, verses 1 through 4. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Listen how calm and nice Jesus is when he's talking to you. Don't be afraid. Trust God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am. Isn't that beautiful? Look what he's telling you. He's telling you there's a place for you, and he has created you. Yes, he's created you to be a warrior, but he's created you to be a warrior for God. Don't let that bother you. You're in a fight. The fight is in your mind. The weapons are your actions and how you're thinking, because your thinking drives your actions. So you've got to be for God. You've got to have faith. You've got to know his word, and you've got to be able to use it to direct your path. You're a warrior. Warriors have times they're not at war. Times they can sit around, joke and laugh and everything. But when it comes right down to it, you better fight, and fight for God, because he's the one that created you. He's the one that made you. He also has made you eternal. And that's something important for you to understand. You are not temporary. Your body is temporary, but you are not. In fact, he tells you you are eternal. You will live on and on and on and on. And he also has given us the rule that hard work demands a reward. It always does. But he says to us, what should it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? What does that mean? Turn it around. What will it profit a man if he doesn't lose his soul? What's he going to profit? He's going to gain a place in heaven with God. He's going to gain that place that Jesus has gone and made for him. You know, when you think about it, the ark had to have a lot of room left over in there. In fact, I was listening to this preacher one time. He was equating all the animals in the world. If you were taking of an average size, you would say that'd be about the size of a sheep. And he had measured how big the ark was and everything. And if you did a train load, and he said there's so many empty cars on the train load. Why in the world did God have so much empty room in there? And it wasn't for Noah and his sons to play polo with those two horses. No. It was because he expected and wanted many people to come to him and be saved. Knew they would. You know, he told Jeremiah, I want you to go here and I want you to teach those guys. I want you to teach Israel and talk to them. I want you to show them everything I'm going to tell you. It's going to take 50 years, and guess what? Nobody's going to listen. Could you imagine? Hard work, being a good person, requires a reward, and God is going to make sure that work is received in treasures laid up in heaven. So, when you do whatever you do in this world, think about heaven. Think about it and make your work and do your work as for the Lord, not for people, not for yourself. Remember, you're only alive because Christ bought you. Otherwise, you'd be dead. And if you're dead, you have nothing to live for. So he's telling you, look, you're alive, work for me, I have bought you, be in my work, be in my stead, whatever it is I give you to do, please do it, because you're my warrior, you're the one I put there to be there on behalf of me. So we've got this command, this demand. And God wants you to live with Him forever. He's made you eternal, and He says, come to me, and whoever's with me, I'm going to take to heaven with me. I'm going there to make a place for you. Do you hear that? He wants you forever. Forever. So don't waste your time here on earth doing things that do not take you to God. Thinking, oh, how is it I can't do anything I want to do? How come I always have to suffer for God? That's not true. In fact, it's farthest thing from truth. He's giving you the optimum way to live. And He tells you there's a place for you. I'm going to make it. I'm coming back for you. I'm going to make sure you're with me. Do not fear. All right, let's take a look at our next point. 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians and chapter 5. Verses 1 through 2. Look what he says here. Now we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. Meanwhile, we groan, longing to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling. So he's telling us, look, we understand this body we're living in is temporary. It's temporary. It's temporary like a tent is temporary. Tent is not for all time living. You know, they tried that over in North Carolina. They had some real problems. They were trying to build houses, and the government wouldn't let them do that, and so on. So they got some tents. They set them all up, and the first snowfall they were all destroyed. And it was a disaster. Because tents are not designed to take care of forever. Well, they may look great at first, but you know, they get old. They start to crack. They start to leak. They start to have problems, and they fall apart. You know that. So look, what do you see here? That's not a tent. That's what? A person. A person is not in good shape. Their tent is falling apart. Their tent is getting worse. The tent cannot continue to exist. It's not designed for that purpose. It's designed to be housing you only for a time. For what purpose? You're a warrior for God. Do what He put you here to do. You've only got a little while. Let me tell you, look at all the people out there in the world. Only a few of them are using their tent for God, are they? And they're not going to last. So what you have to do is realize you are getting some special information here. You're getting something because God wants you to know you're going to wear out. You're going to wear down, because that's how He designed you. And you can go and have plastic surgery or whatever you need, and you can make it look like you got more time, but guess what? one day, your clock will run out as far as your human body's concerned. I submit to you that I think some of the science that we do have is keeping us alive a lot longer than our minds are supposed to be alive. Because it seems like our bodies stay and our mind goes. But no matter what do we know? You're eternal. You're not meant to be here forever. So you can put up with the little problems that come along. They're not big problems. You will go through them. You will have issues that hurt you, hurt your heart. We have loved ones we wish would follow us, and they'll maybe come to your funeral and still go away. I was at this funeral of a lady. She was a great lady. Remember the church? The building was full of her family. She had a lot of kids. They'd married. They all had grandkids. Not one person there came to church. And she had raised them all in the church. She had done everything she could. She was, just before she died, she was laying there on the bed and she said, "GW, I don't know what to do. I'm so frustrated. I can't do anything. I'm just laying here. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I'm just laying here and I'm just despairing over it." I said, "Let me tell you something. Despair is not for God. You've got to stop that thinking. You're still in control of your mind. You're still in control of the battlefield. Be that warrior for God. Look outside. Look at the flowers. Look at the trees. Listen to the birds. Enjoy what God has given you and give praises to Him no matter what place you are in your life." And that's important for us to remember. You will wear out. Your tent cannot continue to exist. We know that. We see that. I bet this woman right here was a pistol. Look at her. She's probably good looking all her life and got everything she ever wanted. Now she's, looks like she's giving people trouble. But he's pretty nice, isn't he? We know we're going to get old. So, here's what we also know. You will be given an eternal body. You will be given a body. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know how it's shaped. We don't know if it has arms and legs. We don't know if it has a face. But here's what we do know. We do know we can know each other. Well, how do you know it, GW? You remember the story about Lazarus and the rich man? And the rich man knew Lazarus, and he knew Abraham. You remember when the Mount of Transfiguration and Jesus is standing before these two guys, and he's got his three apostles back there, and they look over and say, "Look, it's Moses and Elijah." How do they know that? How do they know that? Did they have signs? No. So we're going to know people and know more. We're going to know God. We're going to see God. We're going to see hell. We're going to see the same way. We're going to know all this stuff. And the body we have to have for those conditions is going to be different than the body we have to live under these conditions. It's as simple as that. We don't need to have bodies that can consume meat and can process it and can give us what we need and get rid of what we don't need. We don't need that kind of body. And God gives to us pictures of what it's going to be like there in heaven. And He says, "I'm going to have a feast for you." Okay. Wait a minute, you just said, we really don't need that kind of body. Yeah, that's true. But He's giving you word pictures you can understand. I've got a room for you. You know, do you need a room? I mean, you know, what do we know? Do you have a blanket? I mean, do we get cold? How do we know? What do we know? We know we're going to have a different body, and it's not going to have any aches, and it's not going to be pains. We don't know what heaven's going to be like. Here's a picture that somebody thought. I don't know why this dude is taller than everybody else, but there he is. Maybe some big shot in the Bible. I don't know. We don't know anything about it except it is going to be better than anything you've ever imagined. You ever gone to the Grand Canyon? You step up there. I was very fortunate that they built a rail because as I was going down, these steps are made out of rocks, and I tripped and went forward. Thankfully, they had a rail, and it was good. Or I would have seen the Grand Canyon close up. Would be on the news. And you're looking, wow, you're looking for a while, and for a while, and then pretty soon you're like, okay, let's go home. You won't be that way there. You won't be that way there. You won't be tired of it. That's heaven. It's going to be a place that'll sparkle in your mind. And don't ask me how you mind. I'm just saying that's the way to be. Let's look at our last point here. God tells us it will be too marvelous. Now, first we had it's going to be a place for you. It's going to be a new body. And too marvelous. Look at 1 Corinthians 2. Isn't this exciting? To go through this and study this and see this? I remember I was over with Lloyd. And he wasn't very much in conversation. So I took songs with him and I sang to him. I sang songs about heaven. And he was, is that really the way? Is that what it's going to be like? He was just so excited. We sing these songs. And some of them just make us so excited. Victory in Jesus and all this. Listen to what it says here. 1 Corinthians 2, verses 7 through 9. And you know he didn't tell me to shut, so I guess you like my singing. All right, here we go. 7 through 9. No. We speak of God's secret wisdom. A wisdom that has been hidden and that God designed for our glory from before time began. None of the rulers of the age understood it. For if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. However, as is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, listen, no mind conceived what God has prepared for those who love Him. Look at what he's saying here. Look what he's saying. He's giving you this special wisdom. Why? So you can endure this life. This wisdom is given to you so you can have the courage to live. Not for you to sit there and wonder. Not for you to sit there and say, why did it all happen to me? He's telling you this stuff so you can know. It is a special wisdom. He's telling you this secret stuff. So here's where the wisdom is. It is stashed in there. And let me tell you something. It's a well-kept secret because a lot of people don't open their Bibles. The only times they dust them off is when the preacher's coming over. Remember this story about a preacher, and he goes over to see the people's house, see at their house. They had him over for a meal. You never know whether people want to have the preacher over for a meal. They just feed him because they feel like it's expected. And so he has a meal and everything, and he leaves and he goes home, and she's cleaning up, and she realizes, wait a minute, one of my silver spoons is missing. And she is just really mad about this. She looks at her husband and says, what kind of a preacher do we have? He's a thief. So, a while later, she confronted that preacher and she said, preacher, saw him in the grocery store. Did you take that silver spoon, my grandmother's? He said, no, I did take it from the table, but I put it in your Bible. I thought you would find it. The wisdom is there. What kind of wisdom? Those who know that God is God, and they are not. They're not fools believing there is no God. They seek Him and they find this wisdom. The wisdom He has given you. True wisdom begins and ends with God. True wisdom. So He's telling us, if you want to endure life, prepare yourself for death. Did you hear that? If you want to endure, He didn't say enjoy, endure life, prepare yourself for death. Then you can get through anything. Anything. Does it scare you? There was a preacher by the name of Marvin Phillips one time. He was out there walking around the Astrodome. He was going to preach there. I mean, they used to fill up these places. Today, they can't even put anybody in church. Policeman stuff. What are you doing out here? Well, and they called his elder. What's he doing now? You know. One day he was in his own office, and he was sitting there working away on his sermon, and a guy walks in, pulls out a gun, and says, give me all your money. He said, wait a minute. You can't scare me with going to heaven. You ever thought about that? You ever thought about that? Prepare yourself for death. Be ready for when it comes. You don't know if you're going to live a long life. You don't know if Christ is going to come. Be prepared for death. And one cannot ever even imagine what is waiting for you. You know, if you think about the best thing you ever thought about, how about the most beautiful places in the world you've ever seen? I mean, some really fantastic places. Some people like the beach, you know, they like it. Or some people like to climb mountains or go see waterfalls or whatever. I don't know why this tomb is in there, but anyway, they like beautiful places. They like things that are just fantastically gorgeous. Isn't that beautiful? Wouldn't it be something to see? Man, we say, wow, that's so beautiful. And we've seen it. We know it. I tell you what he says here, you can't imagine. You can't even conceive of how beautiful it is. Now let me tell you something. The God who created this world made these sunrises and sunsets, made these rainstorms that fill you with excitement, made the waves. I was watching a guy, he was out there surfing, 115-foot wave come up. There are things we can't imagine that God has waiting for those who love Him. And it's under the title heaven. That's what we know. God will reward your love and hard work. He has promised us that. He's the one that set the law that you have to be paid if you work. He's the one that designed it for you. We know that somewhere there's a gate, or at least something like that. At least something that can be shut and Satan can't come in. We know somewhere there's a something where we won't be sad, we won't be hurting, we won't be suffering. We won't get old. We won't ever die. We won't ever get scared of the dark. We know there's a somewhere like that. We don't know what's in there. And you know the people who designed this, look at this. See this? See how they made these buildings? Guess what? They're buildings. Buildings only exist in the physical realm. They've got to be stuck down here on the ground, you know, have foundations and stuff like that. We don't know what they're like. We have no idea. We don't know, but you want to tell you, the God who made those beautiful things for us has created a place beyond anything we can imagine for Him to live in. Can you imagine if you were Elon Musk and you had all the money in the world? What kind of a house would you build for yourself? What would you put in there? What kind of paintings would you put on the wall? What kind of fabric would you put on your furniture? How fluffy would your furniture? Would you sit down and go down like, you know, and you can't get up till next week? But you pay somebody, come and get you, come here, get me out of this thing. We don't know what it's like. We just have artist renditions. Here's what we do know. He's giving you this special knowledge so that you can live your life and endure whatever comes and stay faithful to Him. And He will reward you. Don't fall away. Don't despair. Don't think it'll never go. That's not from God. What God has given you is the spirit of positive. I'm His and He's taking care of me because He's my Father and He loves me more than anybody else. Don't you know He wants to give you whatever it is you desire? Some things aren't good for their children. And He doesn't give you that. Make sure you're ready to go to heaven. Make sure you're ready for Him. If you're not ready, now's the time. If you're not dedicated, now's the time. If you've not been baptized, now's the time. Whatever we can do for you, do for us. We stand and sing together.